I'm going to walk around a little bit. See if this works afterward. Perfect. My name is Eyal Darman. I lead Accenture's public service AI practice. And we've got about 500 or so practitioners that support organizations like yourselves in really rethinking how we do the work we do. And the research that we've collaborated with the Colorado Business Roundtable is an interesting one this year. Our combined team helped design the survey, analyze the data, and really shape the insights that you're about to see. And in the attempt to eat our own dog food, or as I like to say, drink our own champagne, we used a lot of AI in thinking and analyzing this data. The message back is not just loud, it's clear, and frankly, it's urgent. Colorado's employees are not waiting for the future of work to arrive. They're retooling how they hire, where they invest, and how they partner with organizations. And they're moving faster than ever before. The real question that this room has to grapple with and wrestle with today is whether the rest of the ecosystem, policymakers, education, workforce development, frankly, all of us, how can we all keep up with that pace? We've got a handful of insights from the research, from this year's research. Some will validate how you probably feel already today, and a few might surprise you. So let's get to it. I'm going to switch to the mic. There we go. So the first area is about the landscape and how the landscape has shifted. Just last year when we sat here and talked about how the landscape is really shifting, we talked about how really there's a labor shortage of some sort. That number this year has been halved. Only 40% of you think that labor shortage is currently a problem that we have. And frankly, that's justified with the data that was shared earlier. Eric shared information around how college graduates are at a point where they are finding less employment than they were in prior years, and it's not getting any better. Here's what is interesting, though. The data this year tells us that economic uncertainty is a real concern. Now, that economic uncertainty is probably multidimensional. It could be because the evolution of AI is really changing the way that each of us does what we do. It could also be that just overall national economic uncertainty, wars, and other things are disrupting our businesses in one way, shape, or form. So there's more a little bit about that. And you see some of the other ones are staying the same. They're not moving in any significant way. I thought one of the key statistics that was interesting is that 60% of employers say that housing affordability is the top Colorado workforce trend, right? That's an important part, and really it's, the so what for us here is the fact that housing is a workforce strategy. It doesn't matter what training we give our employees. If they can't find affordable housing, it will be offset. So that's our first trend for the year. Our second trend is around durable skills. And this one is a personal one for me because I've seen it firsthand. At Accenture, we used to hire people that have a specific degree or a specific skill set. We can train people in those skills over time, yes. But AI has really shifted that. I think I sat on these couches last year and told you that you should think of AI as having 1,000 interns supporting you. Today, it's 1,000 PhD students that can go down to a level of capability that we've never fathomed before. And it's not slowing down. So really the digital or information economy is shifting. It's shifting to be a relationship economy. Think of the soft skills that people have and how you can differentiate yourself. I used to say I can differentiate myself with maybe the specific technical skill that I have. But I would challenge that now. I would tell you that your relationship skills, your durable skills that you see here today, are the ones that I think will make or break people's success. Because anyone can do the technology. Anyone can do those various things that historically were more niche and now can become more of a commodity. And that's a big shift. And as we talked about in some of the prior presenters, we need better skills in that space. And we need to all think of those durable skills across the board. Because that's going to make the difference between a successful organization, a successful person, and as the Gallup survey says, someone who's happy at work and enjoying what they do. And the data supports every single one of those. So it's not a one-off. It's a consistent pattern that we're seeing. And durable skills are ones that are going to be harder to acquire because as a parent of an 8-year-old, she seems to be really entertained by her iPad. And she would like to play on her iPad or use her iPad for various things more than others. That does not build durable skills. Don't let anyone convince you that it does. So we got to think about how do we actually change what we do and how we do. I loved your description around how do I take and put my kid in the basement and see if they can get out of the basement. That seems like that could be some other problems that you create. Those are good examples of how do you create some durable skills within your organizations. If we shift to our third insight, it is about AI. There's some staggering statistics here that are a little disturbing. Again, as someone who spends all day, every day in the AI space, eat, drink, all of it, all the time, we're still in, everyone wants it, everyone thinks it's going to make a big difference, but a very small percentage of enterprises are using it at scale. Most people are still in pilot mode, and we're seeing that improve and increment on a regular basis. But that being said, it's not as fast as people are expecting it to be. The promise of AI is really big, but I could tell you that in very few organizations has it actually materialized. I look at Accenture's organization. We've fundamentally changed how we do the work we do using AI. Not just in how we do our work, but what we deliver to our clients. And that's a noticeable difference in what I would say, I would tell you, not maybe a year or two ago, that's changing at the speed of technology. Every couple months, there's something new and different that changes the way we do the work we do. The scaling of this is going to make the difference. And as we see organizations scale, it goes back to that prior insight of durable skills, having critical thinking abilities, having the ability to have social and interaction conversations with other people that will make the difference. And then our last insights, the last two that we combine together, employers want faster, simpler, and measurable partnerships. Think about, as an employer, our employers have said that 80% of them want talent within 120 days of identifying the need. They want talent training. They want that skill set to be completed. They don't have 3 years, 2 years, a year. They don't have the speed that they used to have. And so organizations and partnerships, like apprenticeships, make a big difference because you can have and give the ability to get those resources skilled at a faster pace. And I think that's an important thing for us to think about. How do we keep at that pace? Because if we can keep at that pace or beat it, as Colorado, we will bring in and attract more talent, more employers, and it will improve incrementally everything. And so that's a key thing for us as a takeaway. I think if you think about all the insights combined, I'm going to read you that bottom sentence there. We're going to accelerate skills-based hiring. We need to treat housing affordability as a workforce strategy. Doesn't sound like it's a workforce strategy, but it is. We need to help our employers move from an AI pilot or a prototype into true enterprise AI in production. And we want to make sure that we're building those partnerships so that we can actually build those skills within our workforce at the speed that the workforce needs them. So with that, I'm going to introduce Sarah Cotter and the panel that we have assembled for us. They're going to have a conversation across how these insights are really appealing in Colorado. So with that, I'm going to introduce Sarah, who's my colleague, and we're going to go into a panel discussion.
I think we're just a tiny bit ahead of schedule. So before we jump into the panel, give everybody a chance to maybe stand up, or many of you a chance to stand up, maybe not everybody. And maybe before I do that, I'll introduce myself. So hi, nice to meet you. My name is Sarah Cotter. I work with Eyal at Accenture. I have a personal rule not to speak after him in public, after he goes. So I'm really excited to be joined by the panelists and hear what they have to say on the survey. I lead our public sector and higher education work in Colorado and also do that in Wyoming and Montana. So it makes me very excited. I think over the course of my career, I've had an opportunity to work in the private sector and the public sector and get really excited about the intersection of those sectors as we look to solve really hard problems. So before we jump into the panel, I'm going to ask you, everybody, we've been sitting for a while. The content has been great. I'm going to give some of you an opportunity to stand up and ask you to stand up if your organization has at least one role right now that you've been trying to fill for more than 90 days. Anybody in here? Thank you. Nope, keep standing. Yep, you get just a little bit longer. Okay. Now stay standing if that role requires a specific technical skill or credential. Okay? And stay standing if you're not totally sure of the training pipeline for that role even exists yet. Okay, so several of you, thank you. Well, that's what we're going to jump into during today's panel. I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then we're going to hear a little bit about how they're working on building the workforce from their diverse lens. So, the far left, we have Eve Lieberman. Eve is the Executive Director of the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade. She was appointed by Governor Polis in January of 2023, and under her leadership, OEDIT has championed economic competitiveness programs, expanded access to capital and talent pipelines, and advanced strategic partnerships to grow Colorado's advanced industries and build an economy that works for everyone. Thanks, Eve, for joining us. Directly next to me is Jeannie Kelly. Jeannie is the Vice President of Human Resources at RK Industries, where she drives strategic initiatives to cultivate a people-centric culture rooted in excellence, agility, and innovation. With over 20 years of experience, including leadership roles at DaVita and Vail Resorts, she has led transformative programs in talent development, organizational design, employee engagement, and workforce development. Thanks, Jeannie. And in the middle, we have Joel Orn, who's the site director for Integris in Colorado Springs, where he leads roughly 300 employees supporting a global microenvironments business in the semiconductor space, serving customers like TSMC, Samsung, and Intel. With 9 years in the U.S. Air Force and prior leadership roles at GE and Medtronic, Joel is known for bridging plant operations and business strategy, and he serves on the Pikes Peak Business Education Alliance for Advanced Manufacturing Board. Thank you guys all for being here. Okay. You all can thank them. Thank you. Okay. So each of you are operating in very different parts of Colorado's workforce system, state policy and skilled trades and advanced manufacturing. From where you sit, what workforce constraint that Eyal walked through is most underestimated right now by people who don't live it day to day? I don't know if we have a volunteer who wants to go first. Or Joel, go ahead.
I can go first. So earlier there was comments made. I'm gonna call out two different skills. Supply chain, for those of you like going through COVID, maybe heard supply chain for the very first time. I think that's a really undervalued skill set that people do not plan for coming out of high school. It's one of those things you fall into and eventually learn over time. Given everything going on in the Middle East right now and some of the other global challenges, supply chain's coming back in vogue for a very hard skill to recruit. That being said, with some of the evolutions of AI and technology, the second one I'll kind of plug, that we've really starting to see as a challenge is the robot programmers, right? So we do a lot of injection molding in our business, plastic injection molding. Pulling hot parts out of those machines has to be done by a robot. And you think about as we scale and as we grow, we're only adding more and more robots and cobots to our environment. So cobots are like small robots. Kids in school think that they're taking computer programming classes to be like the software engineer or to be something in a really high-tech industry. Sometimes in the manufacturing space, just programming those basic robots is something that you will not learn in high school, but you can build a lot of strong foundational programming skills in high school. So we are having a hard time recruiting some of those basic programming skills for people to program our robots. So as we do more automation, as an example, we just opened a brand new facility in Colorado Springs. One of the products we're bringing there has been exclusively built in Asia over the past. And in order to make it cost competitive in the US, we need a lot more automation than we have in the past. And so building those, skills around being a robot programmer is something that we really are, I'll say, chasing at this point.
Thank you.
I don't know if I'm on. I'll switch it really quick just so. For us, what I would say is what is really apparent is the labor pool is so narrow. Depending on what piece of data you look at, we are in a deficit of about 500,000 skilled trade labor in the US. And so we have an immediate need for specific capabilities, and we don't need them in the future, we need them now. We currently internally have hundreds, not dozens, hundreds of open positions that we need to staff immediately. And so with that comes a huge constraint to not only RK Industries, but to, we are a construction, manufacturing, and service company, and so that operates in 6 different states. And so it is a bigger problem for all of us in this industry, not just us as an individual company.
I'm going to take it in a little different direction, and just if you look at all the factors on that first slide that were shown, it's the competition, really. And we are competing with not just states, but other countries in this talent war. And we face enormous headwinds as a state. We're working on them. So, we're working on a lot of housing finance programs to build 9,000 housing units in the last 2.5 years through our office. But we have to really double down and cannot take for granted our most competitive advantage, which is our talent. And so, we all know the statistics. We have the 2nd highest educated workforce in the country, 10th highest labor force participation, and that's across all these in-demand industries. And we see a lot of growth in that area, but we can't just rest on our laurels, because you have states like Virginia that are spending as much on their talent retention programs as they are on their economic incentives. And so that's a signal for us to really pay attention and address this really big pain point for employers. So the governor, the administration has doubled down on that, over $1 billion over his administration, Governor Polis' administration. Director Joe Barella has his leadership in this creating a state apprenticeship agency, transformational. At OEdit, what we're doing is we created a talent innovation office in the last year, led by Misty Ruthin, and we are working in close partnership with Dr. DeSantis, the Chancellor of the Community College System, on a career navigator, so that when primary employers we're helping to recruit to Colorado have a front door to the community college system. We're working with aerospace companies, helping them with transitioning military members that already have a clearance, get access to those hundreds of aerospace jobs. And we're working with many of our amazing semiconductor companies, along with Arizona and New Mexico, neighboring states, to work on that talent pipeline for semiconductors. So we have a sense of urgency on all of the above.
Awesome, thank you. We're going to stick with you, Eve, and talk a little bit about what OEdit is doing. So we heard from Jeannie that the urgency is still a challenge. So across the programs that OEdit is driving, what are you doing specifically, or what can be done within the current system? Where does the talent not meeting up as quickly, and what can you do to drive more speed and to make it a better place for employers?
I think when you look at the existing framework between the partnership between education and industry, that could be tightened. And we really need to listen to what employers are telling us, what the demand signals they're sending to us. But education institutions cannot be responsible for everything, obviously, but they can do about 80% of that. It's more than the majority. And that's creating, talk about the durable skills, talk about those transferable skills. How do you make employees, future employees, more resilient? That's the job of education. And what is the job of industry is the technology, the intellectual property that you have. It's the AI stack. It's figuring out what your proprietary information and work is, and then adding to that. And I think it's also about making sure that you're upskilling your own employees, reskilling your own employees with the technology needs that you need now and in the future.
Perfect. And then just one more question for you, Eve. So there's a lot of exciting work happening right now in Colorado around streamlining the post-secondary system modernization. There was a new legislation that just went through the legislature. Can you talk a little bit, maybe share what that is and how it will streamline the process for learners and employers who want to hire them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is one of the most transformational workforce policy shifts that is happening in the country right now is happening in Colorado. And that is, I'm not sure, many of you are part of it, so you already know, but for those who don't know, the House, the Senate passed a bill that's going to be signed by the governor, House Bill 1317, and it created a task force and kudos to Jess Kolstenek and Catherine Keegan, who were very instrumental in this from the governor's office. And it created a task force to look at unifying educational institutions and federal workforce programs and adult literacy and apprenticeship agency all under one roof. So we're figuring out, eliminate the duplication, eliminate the silos. How can employers and employees have access to one front door to the programs and resources they need to be successful? And how do we scale what's working? We know in our program Opportunity Now, I see a lot of grantees in the room that we are so privileged to work with the partner and create partnerships that never would have existed but for our grants. Between industry co-leading that or leading it with educational partners who are so critical towards this work.
Perfect. And then Jeannie and Joel, can you, and maybe go to Joel first, but where has the public workforce system helped you all scale at Integris? And where has it slowed you down maybe?
Okay, two parts. What's went well, what hasn't went well. Thanks, Eve, for teeing that up on the Opportunity Now grants. In particular, between Integris, Microchip, and InnovaFlex down in the Colorado Springs area, we were able to partner with Pikes Peak State College to develop a IET, or Industrial Equipment Technician program, to upskill our current workforce. Part of, especially at the entry level for a lot of manufacturing positions, they don't feel like they can accomplish more. They're not sure of what that path looks like. So through the Opportunity Now grant and really partnering with the other businesses in the area, we're able to provide some pathways to upskill those individuals already in the workforce. On the other half of that, or the other side of that equation, really trying to find pathways for people coming out of high school. I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of kids that just don't like school, right? So you put a college path in front of them. Even 18 months at a vocational college or vocational school sounds like mission impossible. So we've been partnering through Pikes Peak Business and Education Alliance to connect directly with some of those advanced manufacturing programs in the high schools and really trying to meet the kids where they're at. We're trying to understand, like, what types of skills are we looking for and showing them opportunities where they can come to work right out of high school and then grow their career paths along the way. Second half of the question, what hasn't gone well? I think translating those skills through the recruiting community and then into those community business partners is a real challenge. Like getting them to understand what we're looking for and then trying to find those skills can oftentimes be a little bit of a needle in the haystack. So I think some of this coordinated effort through the state to provide more of that singular door or pathway for us as employers can really help.
I'll piggyback off of that. One of the challenges that we have seen is around credentialing versus competency. There is a ton that is higher education and post-secondary is focused on very broad general studies versus the actual needs that exist within the industry or to an employer. So there seems to be a discrepancy right now that we are looking at where we have found some success is with employer-led collaboratives. I think someone mentioned earlier with Colorado Succeeds and Project Scale, where we have taken, as an industry, we have come together to form a collaborative to make sure that we are building a talent pool that has the specifications and the capabilities and the competencies that we need for someone to come in and be productive right away. So I think translating credentialing to competency is really important. And I think also the speed, and I don't mean to hammer this, but when you're talking about hiring cycles that are only a couple of weeks versus a lot of these programs are semesters and cycles, program cycles, that isn't meeting the employers and the industry where they are at.
Makes sense. So let's talk about some of the trade-offs that are inherent in building talent at scale. So Jeannie, RK Industries is scaling thousands of skilled trade roles, right? I think I read 3,000 recently. Yes.
Yes.
While running accredited apprenticeship programs. We've heard a lot about apprenticeship programs today. What is the hard trade-off between cost, speed, and flexibility? And how have you accepted or to make that work?
Yeah, I think there's a balance between the short term and the long term. Some of the concessions that we've had to make around speed and productivity, number one, from an apprenticeship and an internship program that was talked about so much this morning, or not this morning, I guess an hour ago, that's a long-term play, right? That is to make sure that we have a pipeline that can help sustain the growth that we have not only today, but for the future. In the short term, what the constraint exists that we have to balance is to speed, which comes with flexibility and cost, right? Particularly around costs, what that may look like is we have to pay a premium for labor, a premium for recruiting, supporting, and or delay some of the projects that we are, or defer the projects that we would normally say yes to because the talent pool does not exist.
Okay. And Joel, Integris, no, you guys know what's coming, so it's great. Integris is building leading-edge semiconductor manufacturing capacity in Colorado Springs. You've shared a little bit about that. What workforce capability is hardest to build fast enough, and how are you redesigning your roles or training to make those skills learnable?
Yeah, it's interesting. This one actually comes down to basics. When you're thinking about like pushing the edge on technology, computer chips are only getting smaller, technical requirements are getting tighter, tougher to meet. Honest to God, like some of our toughest challenges are back to like just basic electromechanical skills. I'll talk about the injection molding kind of side of the business. A lot of that used to be really strong in the Midwest of the United States, just that core strong mechanical aptitude. In the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a big push for a lot of offshoring of some of that technology to Asia, honestly, right? And some of that has never come back. So when we are doing recruiting for some of what we call tool makers or people that are working on the tools and equipment that make our products, we either have to recruit out of the Midwest, which is even getting harder, or we have to grow it organically, right? And so we're leaning on some of the apprenticeship programs and trying to leverage some of Colorado Springs is like a mecca of Department of Defense and military, right? So looking for some of those people getting out of the military that have that strong mechanical aptitude, bringing them in-house, getting them into our apprenticeship programs, and really learning to grow that organically. Just reaching out, there's just not some of those hardcore mechanical skills being taught at the high school levels anymore. So having to create our own ecosystem, if you will.
One of the trends that AL talked about was the durable skills. We hear about it a lot as we're helping clients shift and bring AI more into their enterprise and thinking about their future workforce needs. And you saw in the data that the employer community kind of backed it up, that the durable skills are really what are becoming, a bigger challenge or a bigger focus. So can you each talk about, all three of you talk about how we can do better at training for that, or how you are measuring for it in your hiring or even in your performance management practices? What does that look like for each of you in your different roles?
I think when you look at our Opportunity Now grantees, there's a significant pattern that emerges is that there's durable skills built into the programmatic design at every level. And so when you think about, the healthcare sector, Servicios de la Raza is one of our grantees. And they have an 87% retention rate. And why is that? Because they're investing in things like wraparound services and mentoring and coaching and teaching those skills that are, leadership skills and conflict management, things that, shouldn't really be taught. If you're talking about ownership and roles, shouldn't really be taught by employers. So it's really exciting to see some of our grantees understand what that looks like, what their roles are, and what the handoff looks like from education into industry. And especially, we talked a lot about quantum and AI. The pace of technology is so rapid right now. We don't know what the next 3 years of AI platforms we're going to be using are. And so I think that's the job of the educational institutions also, in partnership with government, to really focus on investing in those durable, transferable skills that make for resilient employees.
Yeah, and I'll take the leadership skills like one step further. Problem solving, like kids do not seem to be learning problem solving in school. We talk about the iPad reference, right, where the 8-year-old on the iPad is not learning durable skills. Many of the college graduates even coming out on a manufacturing floor and having them look for like waste or inefficiencies or root cause, problem solving types of thinking. They do not seem to be taught that in school anymore. And it's something that they have to learn once they get into the workforce. So things like, tiered daily management systems, lean manufacturing, those concepts seem to be foreign and a pretty big gap. Integris 2022, we launched a OLDP program, or our Operational Leadership Development Program, where we do rotations the first 3 years in the program, where they do a year as a supervisor, a year in continuous improvement, and then a year in some sort of sourcing or supply chain role, really to help them round out their basket of skills before they are forced to kind of pick their first full-time job. So I would say problem solving for me is one of the durable skills I see the biggest gaps on.
Yeah, critical problem solving is something our head of IT and I talk all the time about, like, what in the world, where did it go? It disappeared in the early 2000s, apparently. But one of the things for us, how it shows up is in performance, right? We can tell immediately when someone comes into our organization particularly around problem solving, and once a project goes off, changes scope, or anything happens that delays, right? How do they get back on track? How does an employee manage through that ambiguity? And also around collaboration. We are a subcontractor on very, very large job sites, so we are not only having to collaborate internally with our own different functions and departments, but we have to, on any project that we're working on, we have to collaborate with those that we're working with, GCs and things like that. And so for us, similarly, we have spent time and energy and resources to revamp our corporate university program so that we can make sure that we are building those skills and honing those skills internally, and using very real life practical curriculum versus very obscure, here's what you do and when something happens. So we're spending time and energy and resources there, and also trying to make sure that it is embedded culturally as part of the norms of how we role model and show up as a leadership group.
That's great. Thank you both. Thank you for the answers. It sounds like a lot of training at the employer level, really, rather than specifically only hiring. So that's exciting. Okay. So we made it to our last question, where we're going to do the fun part, which is making predictions about what's going to happen in the future in public for everybody to hear. Okay. So if we reconvene this panel in 3 years and looked back, what is, from your perspective, the one workforce decision or missed decision that you think would matter most for Colorado's competitiveness? And Eve, we'll start with you because I think you think a lot on a daily basis about what we're doing to be more competitive.
Yeah, I think I have to go back to what we're doing with 1317 and this complete paradigm structural shift. I think it's going to be just truly transformational and ensure that Colorado maintains its strong talent advantage in a really competitive space. But I also want to flag for you, I think there's something on your tables to remind you as well, but I think there's one thing I think, as OEDIT, we have taken on more of the responsibility of helping to, and will maintain that responsibility even where there's this new workforce effort, a unifying agency, is making sure that we have tools for existing businesses. So this is really important for RK Industries because I know you guys are scaling massively ahead of schedule, which is really exciting for us as a state. But I just want all of the employers in the room to know that June 1st, please apply to our Opportunity Now tax credits, which could be up to $15 million. And this is important because there's not many tools for existing employees. And so this is one of them that we've created in the last couple of years. And so that, along with apprenticeship tax credits, intermediary tax credits, these are things that help retain our existing talent and our existing employers, which is so important to ensure that we remain globally competitive.
Yeah, I think 3 years from now, right? Crystal ball time. The traditional career framework or career ladders, I feel, are going to be under the crosshairs for the next few years. When we think about career progression and skills and roles and what do you need to do to get to that next level, I think for decades we've kind of lived in that checking the box, like, oh, I need these certain skills to get to that next level. With AI evolving, I think there's going to be a separation between skills and roles. To where we need to think more about how do we advance our human, capital while working alongside of the AI automation that's going to evolve, right? Like there's going to be repetitive tasks that are going to be shifted away from traditional roles, and I think we really need to think about our human skills as they progress through their careers, as opposed to just thinking skills and roles are directly tied.
I think in 3 years, if we can bridge the gap between the needs of employers and the systems that exist, we as a state can become a place where companies can come and scale very, very quickly because the talent exists, it's ready, and it has the specific job requirements needed to fulfill whatever positions. For me, what I would say that if we focus now on modernizing our education design and what that looks like and how we meet the needs of the industries that exist here in this state versus these broad general studies that have value in certain circumstances, and in others there are very specific ways in which we can modernize the capabilities and the competencies that we are building through our education systems.
Well, thank you. Please join me in thanking our panelists. Really appreciate hearing your perspective. Okay, from here, I think we have another video where we're going to hear about some of the leaders in the community who are focused on workforce every day.